Hey, beautiful people, this is Max coming back to you again with another video for today. And today I wanted to actually go into a little bit more of my story. So this video is going to be based on who I am, Max, and how did this channel come together, or where did the idea for this channel come together. So there's something that you're interested in hearing, just to hear about me, get to know a little bit more about who's speaking to you on a regular basis. Then stay tuned. Let's go on a quick recap of my life. So I was born in the 70s on the beautiful island of Haiti. I grew up in the northeast of America, New Jersey, went to school in Massachusetts. From there, after living there in Massachusetts for 14 years, I moved to Maryland. Lived there for a good number of years, about 6 years. Then I stayed in Delaware for 1 year before moving to Dallas, Texas for 4. And then I've been here in Georgia for about almost 3 years now. So yeah, I've kind of moved around, seen different things, different scenario, different people, different situations, and I've learned a lot. So I'm an entrepreneur, by the way. I do photography, also getting into videography or film making. And with this channel, I'm also getting into coaching. And I'll explain more about the coaching aspect of this channel. But for right now, that's going to come, a lot more that's going to come later on. But for right now, it's just going to be a lot of the life lessons that I've learned that made me a survivor and that brought me to this point here. So since I was a kid, I always loved pictures. I love cameras. I always used to look at images and realize it's a story. You know what I mean? My dad gave me one of his old cameras when I was a kid. I used to take family pictures with that. And no, my story is not one where I took a camera and I started taking pictures all the time, and I started, from there developing. No. Everything came a lot later in life. But with that camera, I used to take family pictures and keep some memories here and there. In the mid-90s, a friend of mine had a mid-level entry amateur professional camera that he had for sale. It was a Minolta Maxim 7 XI. And when I saw, he said, "Hey, Max, you want to buy a camera?" When I saw that camera, I was like, "How much?" And the price was right. I had to put some money aside. And I even bartered for it with a basketball as well. I was like, I gotta have this camera. So I bought that camera. It was a film camera back in those days. And that's when my photography journey and my entrepreneurial journey started. But at the time, it wasn't even an entrepreneur, because at the time, I was doing it as a hobby. I wasn't really interested in doing it full time. All the photographers that I had ever seen were these church photographers, the old guys who just take wedding pictures and church pictures. But it was never sexy. It was just images. And when you went to a portrait studio, oftentimes it was just a dingy, dark place with a bunch of portraits lined up on the floor. They would take picture after picture of the same poses, and that's all they did. That didn't interest me. It wasn't until into the digital age, around 2009-ish, after I had started getting into digital camera, because I had in the mid 2000s, that Minolta was stolen. I lost it somewhere. I don't know where I lost it. And I was using one of my cousin's digital camera. I can't remember the name, but it was like a amateur everyday camera. And I would take pictures of different events and things like that. But in the late 2000s, I started to discover, through a platform called Creative Live and other avenues, I started to discover these big international and national photographers who would travel, who were creative, who would do all types of different photography, and it wasn't the same thing over and over, and they were making a great income at it. And then it happened that at that very same time, I was also kind of lost. I didn't know what I wanted to do in life anymore. But when I discovered that, then I knew what I wanted to do full time. But let's rewind a little bit further back, a little bit prior in my life, or sometime before that. When I was 9, I vividly remember this conversation. I was already in America. My dad had a Chevy, and I realized that one day, because I loved my dad's car, right? He had bought several Chevys at the time when we lived in New Jersey, and I said to myself, you know what? One day, I want to own GM because Chevy is made by GM, General Motors. I was like, yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna own GM. I've always been a creative and an artist since I was a kid. I used to draw cars all the time. I was fascinated with cars. I used to draw them all the time. I would draw people as well. So I was always a creative. But I still remember around 9 is when I decided I am going to be I'm gonna own GM one day. And as I got older, and I realized, well, to own GM or to get in that field, you have to be an engineer. I actually tried pre-engineering in college, and you know what? The whole school thing didn't work out for me, and that dream eventually went away. So, but I always knew I wanted to own my own business, and I wanted to be able to take care of my parents. And so, the dream of or the evolution of my entrepreneurial dreams shifted. When I was younger, I was working for in the wireless business, and then from there, I tried mortgages, then computers, but eventually I kept going back to photography. And so entrepreneurship and creativity have always been part of my life. Now, another thing that I realized that has affected me throughout my life is when I was younger, I would pay attention to different people and different things and how people moved. For example, like when I was a teenager, I realized that a lot of the older guys in the churches that I went to, when I was a kid, they would have these nice cars when they were in the late teens and early 20s, right before marriage. And once they got married, they would go back to these regular cars. So they would go from nice sports cars, BMWs, Benzes, back to regular cars. And nothing's wrong with regular cars, but they would go from living the luxury life to going back to regular cars. And so I would always pay attention to things like that. And I realized, I don't know if I ever want to be in that situation where I'm used to driving a Beamer is one of my favorite vehicles, period, favorite car brands, to going back to a Honda is what I currently drive and one of my favorite regular car brands. And since I was a kid, I realized things like I want to drive a regular car so that not when I was a kid, I would say more in my 20s, I realized that I would rather drive a regular car and build up to the luxury instead of having to start with the luxury and then life happens, you got to go back to the regular. Another thing I remember vividly when I was a kid is when we were teenagers and in our early 20s, late teens, early 20s in Massachusetts with the crew that I used to hang out with. I remember one day I told them that, you know what? Because, back then it was living in Massachusetts outside of Boston. It was about Central Mass and 45 minutes to an hour outside of Boston. Not a heck of a lot going on in that town. And all we used to do, because we were church kids, so all we did is we would go to the gym, play ball. We would go bowling, roller skating, outdoor restaurant, things like that. And every time we would get together, it was a few of us that had cars and then a few of us that had gas money. And it was always a struggle to figure out who's going to help out with gas, right? A whole big discussion. People were discussing about who's going to ride shotgun, who's going to give gas, and things like that, right? And back then, you can scrape together a couple of dollars to get like $5, $6 and have a decent amount for the cars we were driving back then. So a decent amount of gas. But it dawned on me one day that I said to myself, you know what? This routine is not fun. I would rather be able to afford to to call up everybody when I'm older and say, you know what? I want you guys to drop everything you're doing. We're going to go out to an island close to Hawaii, or we're going to go out to France this weekend. We're going to fly out to France, leave your wallets at home. You're going to come to a location that I have reserved, and everything was on me. And I was like, that is real fun. trying to figure out who's going to pay for gas for the weekend, that wasn't fun. And so some things were always in me. But as I would try various paths in my life, and even when I got to the point where I realized what I want to do, which is photography, the way that I was taking the path, I realized it wasn't working, and I realized I had a lot to learn, and I've learned a lot over these years as well from me trying to do my own thing full time. So from there, from time to time, I would have different 9 to 5s and things like that up until 2016 when I left my last 9 to 5 and I realized that I'm a creative and I would rather have full control of my time versus, having to go clock in and clock out and do the whole thing of applying from time to time. I hate the application process every time you have to go for a job. And now it's even worse because now you have to submit an application. You have to find a company. Oftentimes you have to fill out a membership to some online website that gives you jobs. Then once they tell you about a job, you often have to go and fill out an application with that company. And then from there, you have to put in your resume. After you put in your resume, they ask you to fill out the same information again. And then you hope to get a call back. And oftentimes, unless you have a super high, strong resume, oftentimes you don't get called back. Because back in the days, you can call up a hiring manager and say, I would like to come and set up an interview. I would like to apply. Now you're just a resume in an application. So it's a lot tougher. So in 2016, I realized it's not for me. The whole 9 to 5 thing is not for me. And I realized I would rather work 100 hours for myself than have to do the whole thing of working for somebody. Even the thing about calling out, I used to hate that. So when you're creative, when you do photography, gigs come up from time to time. And you can't do them because you have a job. So you have to kind of fake your voice as if you're sick, act like you're sick, find a reason that makes sense to call your boss, even if you have time off, right? So let's say you have 2 weeks of vacation, 8 days of sick days, right? 8 sick days. You still have to come up with a legitimate reason why you're calling off. And I always hated that process. And so I was always observant. I'm a person where I love to know why things happen. I love to find out details. I love to listen. Because, for example, when growing up, right, the way we were raised is our families, when we lived in New Jersey, a lot of us were, aunts and uncles, cousins. A lot of us lived in the same area. We would get together on Saturdays after church, spend the whole day together. And then we would always, the parents would talk. Now, the kids weren't the kids were not allowed to butt in to adult conversation, right? You know about that. At least people back in the days used to. But kids weren't allowed to butt in adult conversations, but we can listen in. And man, they would have great discussions, talk about different things, different topics, different stories. And all these things shaped me. And my father's a pastor. So, and we come from a family of a bunch of different ministers. And another thing that affected me is we always lived a life of servitude. And so for me, growing up, I would always help out different people that needed help. I would take the time to give them advice, help them with whatever I can. And oftentimes I would give people advice on various things such as life, relationships, even business at time, money, even things that I did not experience, but from watching other people, from observing situations, from watching various scenarios, I would give people advice and give people counsel. Like I could listen to them and take all their junk and give them a bit of advice. You know what I mean? And so all of this is what has made me. And YouTube has become one of the best platforms to build a strong business. And so I realized I'm going to take what I'm good at, which is over the years, I've had a lot of failures, but I learned that I'm not a failure because because I failed. You fail and you learn and you become stronger when you get back up and you continue. And so through these things that I've been through, I realized, you know what? Not gonna try to act like some fake guru. I'm not a psychologist. I didn't finish college. I'm not a financial expert. I'm not a business expert. I didn't build a big business. But I've learned things, and I've read things, and I've watched videos, and I've learned things along the way that have helped me survive. I've read books and different things that I've been through, and all of this combined has given me the ability to. It brought me to this day where I'm able to stand back up, hold my head up high, and keep going and understand that your failures don't make you. Learning from your failures, adjusting, and becoming stronger is what makes you. And your future is something that's unwritten. You and God alone can put a great thing together no matter what you've been through. And so all of this has culminated to this moment to build this channel. And so what I've learned to be good at is surviving, getting back up, reassessing my life, being honest with myself, and understanding what I need to do next. And so I'm in a situation where I'm ready to get to the next level, and this channel is going to be part of that journey. And I'm going to be giving a lot of the life lessons that I learned. And as I build my business, I'm going to be giving business advice and helping people who want to start YouTube or various business, or people who feel stuck. And so what I've done my whole life, I'm going to take it to the next level with this channel. So I'm excited, looking forward to connecting with you guys, looking forward to building my community. My goal this year is I put it, to a higher level where I want to get to at least 75,000 subscribers this year. So let's build this community up. Let's, help me get to that level. Subscribe, share. Let's talk. Let's communicate. Let me know if you have things you're working on, things that's holding you back. If you have any comments about your journey, put it below as well. Let's build this community and let's all get to the next level. So I'm looking forward to this journey. And then until the next video, be your best.